bad reputation, and it isn't just talk. If I could only give you everything, you know I haven't got. I couldn't have one conversation if it wasn't for the lies. And still I wanna tell you everything till I close my eyes. Suddenly I'm wrong.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Atheist Experience. We are live. Today is October 26, 2008.
Good.
And now I'm going to silence my phone while Tracy gets to the topic for today.
All right. Yeah, and the topic today is going to be about what people mean when they say something is my belief. And so I wanted to start off with something that seems almost like it's not related, but it will tie in. And that question is, how do you know what is moral? I want to start by asking if there's any atrocity whatsoever that would make you halt and question the action you're about to take if you thought it was directed by a God. If you believe God's instruction is more moral than your own judgment, how did you manage to come to the conclusion that that instruction is more moral than your own morality by your own estimation if you're not able to evaluate that morality using your own limited moral reasoning and judgment? If you're unable to state that you feel adequate to judge the morality of any action you're labeling moral, what is your basis for calling it moral? And it's sort of tied into the concept of euthyphro to a certain extent. So is there any case in which you would trust your moral judgment over something that you thought was instructive?
Now, I apologize because I was slightly distracted. I think I'm getting what you're talking about, and I hope I'm not stopping on something that you come up with later. Is this in any way deal with this thing we've talked about before of, let's say, for example, someone asserts that God is morally right? What criteria are they using to judge him by? How do they determine that God's the good one and the devil's the evil?
Correct. So you had to have used some criteria in order to make the assessment to come to the conclusion that you think that God is moral.
Right.
So how did you get there if you can't trust your own judgment?
Yeah.
How did you end up?
I'll let you.
That's okay.
I think this may be in the, you're going to talk, well, the thing is that one of the responses to that from Christians so often is that, well, if you just look in Romans, God has written this moral code in our heart. So it's not really me making this moral thing. God, well, if that's the case, then God has programmed you to think he's the good one. And then it doesn't actually translate to whether or not that's any kind of
what I'm going to get into, though, is the idea of what some Christians mean when they say, I believe.
Good.
And what some of them mean by that is, I simply don't ask what I believe, and I accept what I'm told. And what some of them mean by that is, I believe differently, but I'm going to ignore that and believe what I'm told. Because I have yet to meet someone who questions whether or not the instruction within the Bible that they are claiming to accept, and that's one of the things I'm talking about, is that this is specifically related to that Christian that says, I believe the Bible. So the question that I'm going to present is, when you're saying that, what do you mean? Do you mean that you believe that it's factually correct, or do you mean that you support it on a moral basis? Because that's two different things. But both of those things are often encompassed in that single statement, and the problem is they're not always meant. So sometimes a Christian will say, I believe the Bible, but when you start talking to them about some of the morality that is dictated in the Bible, you'll find that they start to become uncomfortable. And my problem with that is that if you believe that's moral, why does it make you uncomfortable? So I have a good deal of difficulty believing that's your belief if you have trouble accepting it. Because your belief is actually, that internal part of you that agrees with what you're hearing. And if you don't agree with it, how can you call it your belief? So to get more into the detail of that, I guess that's sort of an outline of it. The first thing is, if I'm trying to explain an idea that's not my own, and that I'm not asserting as my own belief, then it's fair to post a link to an outside article. So if we're arguing with somebody online and they ask me a question, and the question is not about something I believe, but it is a question I can answer. So for example, if somebody asks me, what is some sort of formula, a mathematical formula. Well, it's not my formula. I didn't come up with it, but I might be able to find it online and send you a link to that. In that case, I'm not really supporting any belief of mine. I'm simply giving you what someone else
Right.
came up with, and I'm admitting to that. I can say, you know, here's what Hawking says about Big Bang. If someone writes in and says, why do you say something came from nothing? Basically, while I'm not saying anything about universal origins, since I'm not a cosmologist and had nothing to do with deducing the theory of Big Bang, the fact is that this is a question for a cosmologist on a question of cosmology geared toward a criticism of a cosmological model. So I'm just letting the person know, basically, this is what a cosmologist says about this question. And that is not my belief. That's merely me relaying information about a question that they asked. They may assume that I believe it, but generally I will come out and say, this isn't, you know, I'm not claiming this is my belief, but you're asking this question and you seem to be gearing it toward a scientific model,
Right.
and this is what the model says. Does not mean that's my belief. In fact, many times the information that I have to relay is information that I may not fully grasp, but I'm simply saying this is the scientific response to this, and I don't claim to believe what I don't understand. I simply am saying this is what scientists are saying about
Yeah,
this.
in that case, it may be more, you know, one of the things we've talked about many times is the idea that obviously we have time for all of us to go, or the capability,
Right.
to go and learn and understand everything. And so there comes a point where you accept, and this is why there's such a huge problem with this argument from authority fallacy, you accept the word of recognized authorities and you trust, for example, that the scientific peer-reviewed process is going to more often than not lead to a better understanding of reality. It doesn't necessarily qualify as a belief in the
Correct.
sense that we're talking about it, but you know, you can say I accept this, and it would even be okay for you to say I believe that, in the sense that based on my understanding of it, I believe that their answer is, you know, the best so far.
Supported by the evidence.
Yeah, it's the one that's most accurate with the evidence.
Right.
And it isn't just talk. If I could only give you everything, you know I haven't got